starting off the last part of our day with a cracking panel, the future of generative AI. So I'd like to turn to our panel members now. And panel, I far better, I think, that you introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit more about yourselves. So one by one, I'll call you by name. And could you tell us who you are, what you do, and maybe just give us one really interesting use case of how you're currently using Gen AI. So Gaurav, would you like to kick off?
Sure. Gaurav here, Head of Security at Axon. Axon, it primarily works in the evidence collection and management space. And where we used a very unique case of Gen AI is our body cameras that police forces, defense forces use for evidence collection have now evolved into, Star Trek fans would know, a universal translator and transcriptor. So we can transcribe and translate two-way communication in any language to any language that the police forces understand and can use to communicate.
Thank you very much. Amy, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon. Amy Shi-Nash. I've been in the data machine learning AI space for a while. I most recent role as the Chief Analytics and Data Officer at Tabcorp, and previously I've working in banking and also lived in Singapore for 7 years. And so really glad to be here. One of the use cases, I guess, is how to use AI to connect to some of the unstructured data, which previously is very hard to use. So use the knowledge graph, we can create the connections in between data, for example, creating a really valuable data asset. I call it Horsepedia. It's basically connecting, the horse information, the jockeys and stuff. It's Melbourne Cup Day today, so it's really powerful in connecting various forms of knowledge, and then you can preventing. Really enabling the creative side and the human to use them more effectively.
Thank you very much. Andrew, hi, next to you.
Yeah, hi Tim, great to be here. Andrew Dome, I'm the Chief Digital Information Officer at Uniting, New South Wales ACT. We are an aged care provider and community services provider in Australia. And we've actually created our own generative AI platform, which is really a digital front door for our employees. And one of the great use cases that we've gone live with is the ability to create a progress note for our customers using voice to text. So negating the need for our employees to write up care notes and really turning those sort of 15 to 20 minute transaction activities, making them 1 to 2 minutes now. They can do it at the point of care. They can do it in their native language as well. 50 languages are actually represented. So if English isn't their native language, they can do it in Balinese, they can do it in Indian or Chinese. We'll convert that into English and put it into the clinical system, into the back end for us as well. So the great response that we're getting back from our employees is, we're getting 1 to 2 hours back in the day, removing this administration burden from them, and you times that by 9,000 frontline staff. Considerable savings we're seeing.
Okay, thank you very much. Andrew, Zeljko, finally.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks for having me. I'm since over 20 years now in Asia Pacific. For the last 3 years with ISS, a Danish company in the facility management industry. I'm running the IT here in the region, Asia Pacific. One of the major AI use cases that we have been recently established is as well. So for us, facility management is understanding the building that we are operating in. And this is the eyes and the ears. We have IoT components, sensing, and then basically projecting everything on a dashboard, which then obviously has as well the next feature, the next step, to understand the data and then conclude certain understandings and triggers that then as well help us to reduce time, safety incidents, and as well improve all the kind of efficiencies that you can have in a major building, banks, hospitals, whatnot. So that's basically the business that we are in at ISS.
Wow, that's a brilliant use case. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing that. Look, we have an exam question to answer. And I know we've got another 40 minutes to answer it, but let's answer it in the first 10. The future of Gen AI. From your perspective and your own experience and your own businesses, what do you say that the future of Gen AI looks like and holds for you? Zeljko, can I ask you to kick off?
Yes, certainly. Perhaps not so much in the industry that I'm in, but a bit connected with it. So I just started, for example, looking a little bit into this possibility with having the eyes and the ears in the organization with sensors. And I believe the next trend, also what you see, for example, the whole development with AI, it's moving forward. You had a similar kind of situation when Google basically established as a single one kind of search engine. Before it, we had many. At the moment, we have many of these kind of AI tools that are out in the market solving different kind of problems. But what's still missing is this next kind of step into merging into fewer of these versions. That's the first thing. And I think the next potential is to move as well from this, what Google was doing, finding things for us, now with AI, doing things for us. And that's basically still in the virtual world. One thing that has really changed, that I see really evolving very quickly at the moment as well, is the whole environment of robotics. So you can be obviously as well in a virtual environment do test and move forward. But I think with the whole robotics topic, robots as well evolve so much faster right now because you can put them, you can develop them in R&D kind of fashion in a virtual environment. And that's why it's happening so much faster than this whole thing has happened in the past. And I think one of the big trends will be as well to translate and transform basically everything what we're able in the virtual world to move it into a real world with robots, and having here, as I mentioned as well, the potential of sensoric to understand the environment that the robots are in, and to evolve even faster, to do things more in an environment that we wouldn't have seen. So mostly you see the whole education, healthcare kind of like piece, everything but this knowledge work that has transformed. And I think there is also more transforming further as well in the world of basically simple tasks and things that still humans are being used for, more replaced with a robotic environment.
Thank you. My colleagues here would like to replace me with a robot, and it's not far off, I can assure you. Amy, from your perspective.
Sure, I think I would love to have a robot for sure in the future. This is where the lots of the healthcare and the combination of human and robot living together for sure. For me, I think the opportunity is the speed and the scale of the adoption in the region. So there is so much agility, in this part of the world, and the consumers really have a very high expectation. I think very open to new experiments and new ideas, and I think that would bring in the things like how do you bring really the human-centric into this, with different languages and things much more smoothly, and also connecting with your proprietary data. I think that is another big area for the Gen AI, with your domain knowledge, your structured, your unstructured, how you do business, your product, the call center, all of this linking together, and with a bit of a real time obviously very important in our industry. And I think if you think about the experience and with the connectivity on your proprietary data, the domain, how the product should behave, and what kind of information you can push out to the customer and then trigger that experience. So all of these are coming together is really quite powerful.
Andrew, we started today's Tech and AI Live talking to Dr. Santosh Karthikeyan from AstraZeneca. So he was talking about the application of in the R&D, the medicine development end of health and social care. You're at the sharp end, the patient and customer focus, shall we say, end of it. How do you see the future of Gen AI from your perspective?
So we're already seeing it. So, we're looking at using Gen AI for the creation of care plans. So that's the ability for us to look at a customer, look at their physical routine, their age, their cultural background, the demographics, and actually create a care plan for that customer, which is typically now done by 3 or 4 specialists or experts within our organisation. But if we can use AI to create that care plan, still having human in the loop, of course, to review, QA that, and make sure that that's applicable. But if you can think about using data points for similar people of that age, similar culture backgrounds, physical well-being, you're likely to get a much better care plan in the future using Gen AI, having that human loop still to QA, as I said before. So we are seeing that. And just coming around medication side of things, the AstraZeneca call out, there is absolutely the potential to, as we look at robotics in the future, to dispense medication using robotics and making sure that the right medication is given to the right customer at the right time, and we're not making mistakes. So again, that's definitely on the pathway, and I think it's going to add some real value in the future. Even in our region, I know other countries are doing it, like Japan. They're a little bit further ahead in this space compared to the likes of Australia, but absolutely that's on the roadmap for organisations like ourselves.
Just one thing strikes me before Gaurav, we come to you, Andrew. Your customers, the people that you look after, more than ever value human contact. Of course, there's a sensitivity there about how far you can push the application of AI solutions, isn't there, or am I wrong?
Oh, absolutely, and it's a question. It's debated weekly. We have a conversation with our board, actually, and our executives every year around the ethical and responsible use of AI and what would we allow AI to actually do. 12 months ago, we did have a conversation around would we allow AI to create a care plan for a customer, and back then we said no, we wouldn't. And the reason was that the board was not as familiar with AI. You had sort of ChatGPT coming out 6 months prior to that. They've now used the tools. They've seen that we've got security controls in place. We've got governance in place. We've got guardrails in place. Their understanding of AI is a lot better than ever before. They are typically sitting on other boards as well, which are involved in Gen AI initiatives. So the understanding is better. And as long as we give that, that surety around the human in the loop still, QAing that content, making sure that care plan is right. The mindset has shifted over the last 12 years with that more knowledge to say, we are looking to do other things in AI that we weren't actually looking at a year ago. But it's a continual conversation. We typically will have this review every single year with our board.
Thank you. And Gaurav, answer the exam question, please, if you would. The future of Gen AI from your perspective.
Yeah, so weaving it back to the industry we operate in, public safety. So we help our typical customers, our police forces, and they are serving the community. The way I see Gen AI changing the public safety and community safety is by consolidating multiple pieces of information that are held in different systems, whether it's the policing databases, dispatch systems, ambulance systems, different jurisdiction trains, metros. Gen AI, where we are helping our customers, is changing that completely. Instead of juggling data, now officers receive a concise, real-time summary from all those sources. Which vehicles are involved in any activity, prior incidents linked to number plates, witness statements, already transcribed from footage. What used to take police officers hours to collect, and then days to, going back to the point that was mentioned earlier about transcribing, writing reports, all of that, Gen AI is helping us accelerate all that process from days and weeks into sometimes hours. That's how I see Gen AI changing community safety, public safety, not as another layer of technology, but as the connective tissue that turns overwhelming amount of data into immediate understanding and accelerates justice transparently.
I'm really glad that you've said just that. But I was asking a dear friend of mine last night. I asked the very same question, Mr. ChatGPT, other AI models are available. And the answer was brilliant. No longer should businesses be saying, we have AI, aren't we clever? That's pretty meaningless. They should be saying, we have unique data. We know how to use it and we're leveraging it. Do you agree with that, Zeljko?
Look, I think it's a very common challenge that we have nowadays, because this whole, and many people call it an AI bubble that we're in, everybody tries to have some use case and to put a lot of money into, for example, even what you see startups, any kind of startup is being invested in. not so much in terms of like the choice in terms of quality, but much rather simply having these ideas and to jump on a train, not on the train, but on a random train. And I think what many companies have underestimated as well is a bit this level of quality that you need for your data. So, for example, in many companies, or our company, we come from a history with many mergers and integrations, which means we had to as well adopt new applications from other companies and somehow find a way how to consolidate and conclude. And I think one, especially from a historical perspective in the past, you're so busy, you have to act very fast, and you very often forget somehow like to structure, to think from a big picture perspective, to get your data in order to then as well be able to conclude the right data or decisions that you would need, especially if you want to move forward in the AI environment. So from my perspective, it's absolutely a must. It's a foundation to really be successful in AI, besides the use case that you need. But I think you really need to focus on this and to get your data straight, to then be able to really have other quality conclusions eventually based on your data.
Gaurav?
I totally agree. It's not about the matter of just having data. It's also about the quality of data and the ability to derive insights, meaningful insights from the data organizations have. I totally agree with what Zeljko mentioned. Every organization wants to use AI, but quite often even the boards and executives in those organizations struggle. Okay, how? We do want to use AI, but to do what? To what outcome, to what end goal? And that's where we really need to focus. Like, if the data we have, how do we serve our stakeholders, whether we are a money-making business or not-for-profit? At the end, if the data we have or the products we create, if it doesn't serve our community or stakeholders, AI is just a shiny automation if it doesn't help the community.
Andrew?
Yeah, everything starts with data, right? AI is data. So if you don't know your data, you don't know where it is, you don't know the classification of it, you're not going to be in a very good starting position to kick off your AI journey. So when we started with our AI journey, the first thing that we did is we went out to the business and said, well, what's your business problem you're trying to solve? And we came up with some use cases. We narrowed it down to 10 and then focused on 3. And our Gen AI platform probably actually took us another 6 months to get to production, because we had to, in parallel, understand our data, understand where it was, understand the sensitivity of those data, and put in the security controls before we could then productionize our Gen AI platform to make sure that the data and the content that is being retrieved was only accessible by the people that should have it. So again, lessons learned around all of this. If I could give some advice to people that are embarking on this journey, is understand your data first and put your controls in place with your guardrails before you start opening this up to a production-wide platform where people are potentially accessing data and information they shouldn't be.
I'm going to come back to guardrails and regulations right now after I've invited Amy just to touch on the data question.
Yeah, sure. I think that, I totally agree. I think one of the opportunities actually using AI is to connecting the data sources that you previously unable to use. There's so much of your domain knowledge, like how much understanding you have of the product and the call center, handbooks and all the Confluent pages when you develop all this stuff, and the AI actually allow these to be connected and humanized, and that they can bring in the understanding of your products right in the center of your question, your understanding. And I think if you can connect that unstructured data in a nice way, in an organized way, and together with your real-time information transactions and stuff, that can make AI really unique and powerful. So yeah, we're on the very similar page.
Yeah, and Andrew, look, thank you for raising that whole topic of guardrails. Somebody on one of our keynotes earlier today was talking actually in terms of agentic AI, saying that we do not currently have the right architecture in place, even to protect future applications from cyber attacks. There's a whole development piece to be had. So with the proliferation, I hope, of more AI applications in your businesses and in business in general, Where are we with regulation and guardrails? Do we have any gaping chasms? Andrew, I don't know if you want to pick up on that.
Yeah, sure. So in Australia, we do have some fairly loose recommendations around guardrails, which the federal government has sort of jumped on, and they are publishing those. It's pretty fair to say they were late to the party. You've had organisations that have been working in AI for over a year, 18 months, even 2 years. We've been working on ours. It took us 12 months to bring our platform to production, and we were, I think, one of the first organisations. We're a non-for-profit, by the way, and we were probably one of the first non-for-profits to create our own guardrails and then publish those. And then people saw that we had published those and asked for advice about, how did you create them? Could we actually leverage some of that content and information? So there definitely is getting more regulation around the use of AI and what you should and shouldn't do. Internally, as an organisation, though, we have training around the responsible and ethical use of AI. So we've published those guardrails. We make it mandatory for training before our employees can actually get access to our Gen AI platforms. So we've gone quite a long way down to try and close that gap around the guardrails and putting in place, the training before we actually open up this access to our employees.
Zeljko, are you satisfied that we have the right regulations in place for what's coming? And I wonder if there's another context, another layer to add, and that is that for those organizations operating across multiple regions and multiple countries, it becomes even more complicated.
Yes, indeed. No, look, I see it always from two aspects. From the personal aspect, how I use basically these tools that are available, as well as from a corporate perspective. You've started a bit like talking about architecture. And in our case, being a low margin business, we have a bit of a kind of different approach, I would believe, than, for example, in the automotive industry, where I have potentially more investments in the area. But we have also we have a certain part with core technology that we have running very, very structured and very much like in a small coherent kind of environment to be able to have these policy and guardrails in. And at the same time, we have also customer or country-specific solutions and environments that run a bit differently. I think moving it a bit in the personal sphere, the personal experience that I've made, also in terms of ethics, how to use, for example, AI, I have different experiences in terms of what tool I use. And I think the problem is we shouldn't be over restrictive in some areas. And some of the different kind of solutions, they are more or less restrictive. And I think it very much depends not so much on the system, but potentially what kind of sensitive areas basically we would like to have help or include AI. And one potential solution I would see would as well be beside of the architecture as well, more like kind of like a usage license, right? So depending on, for example, be it a profession, be it of a kind of an interest or a field where you're in, to then define basically, are you qualifying to, for example, go into a certain kind of dark hole instead of being more kind of in a more, let's say, shallow environment in terms of addressing and working together with AI solutions. So from that perspective, I think it's for me still a very different thing how to use it personally, privately, because I think we also have things with privacy laws and regulations that we have to consider with the whole kind of deep fake piece, as well as from a corporate perspective, the whole possibilities with these kind of phishing attacks, as well as hacker attacks into the organization, where we then have to be obviously a bit more restrictive and have different kind of aspects in mind to protect the environment.
Thanks, Zeljko. Gaurav?
As usual, regulation, in my opinion, lags behind innovation. There would always be that tussle between regulation and innovation. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. If I answer this question from a different perspective, that if regulation is on over-regulation is exactly where malicious actors and nation states would want the APAC to be, so that we slow down our innovation while malicious actors continue innovating, and they collaborate and innovate much better, much faster than countries do. We do not collaborate or innovate as a region, let alone as a country, as fast as they do. So where we are leading that, and we understand in Axon and the whole public community safety industry, we understand that regulation is lagging, but that's where we build defensibility in our product lifecycle. We lead with risk-based governance. we partner with government, industry, and academia to understand what are some of the ethics, as Andrew mentioned, the ethics and responsible uses of AI. We have a board called JEDI, Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, which has members from the community, unpaid volunteer members, that inform us about equitable development of our products. Given our products are used in the handling of privileged information, identification use of culprits, victims from both perspectives, using facial recognition is very, very important how we develop our products, and we are mindful of all sorts of diversity. And that's where we understand regulation would come on later, but we partner with the community, government, volunteers, academia to include their voices are baked into our product lifecycle.
So many AI applications today are about replacing existing ways of working, carrying out specific functions that we already do to make it more efficient or to make it better. To what extent in the next foreseeable future, how many years dare we look ahead, will AI be more properly used to actually innovate products, innovate services and operations within companies? I mean, do we have many companies that are mature enough in their AI application, AI usage to really innovate in a way they haven't before? Gaurav, I don't know if that's something that you feel you can touch on.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, and we quite often think about what's the difference between AI and automation.
Yeah.
A lot of problems we have solved in our company and in the industry partners we see, we still are at a stage where AI has helped us accelerate automation. AI has helped our employees be far more productive. But are we really solving new problems that we could not before the advent of AI? Don't think so. We are still solving the problems of yesterday. We haven't come to a problem that we could not solve with all the computing, with all the capacity quantum computers we had as of 2022. We are still solving problems of 2022 and the years before then. I think, yeah, to answer, yes, in a few years, I think we would hit a wall where or capability where AI would advance enough that we would start solving problems that we could not solve without AI. Problems such as bringing different communities, different industries together. Problems such as, can we solve global warming with the help of AI? Can we solve world hunger, poverty that we could not solve before the advent of AI? And that's where I think we can start solving the big problems. And that's where we would be like, oh yeah, now we are solving problems that really matter.
The sorts of problems to solve you mentioned are huge. We'll have to wait and see. Amy, what innovation do you see occurring that because of developments in AI that are not occurring at the moment?
I think we're obviously really early stage in terms of the adoption, and also us as thinking about what AI can help us. I think we're really at the early stage. That's why we're looking at the problems we're currently solving, the way we're solving it, and trying to use AI to kind of replace the way how we do things. And then it is going to change. I feel there's a bit of adoption, and us as a human, our cognitive and then our adoption and how do we work and utilize this technology is going to be fundamental in creating something very different. And I feel like the skills, the difference between how we trained to do things and thinking about now in the future what is most valuable in terms of the judgment, and then the real communication kind of focus on the problem. How do we thinking about it and evaluating it, and then sort of also continues kind of a lifelong learning. We're quite early, so I think that is really critical in have a real innovation getting into this. It's about thinking of us, thinking about the way we do things and how we live. The societal kind of problems we're trying to address, and really focus on those things rather than looking at the tech itself.
And thank you. And Andrew, perhaps I can pass that baton to you.
Yeah, well, I saw an interesting stat the other day, and I think it was a Gartner one that said 80% of AI platforms or initiatives stop when it gets to the proof of concepts, because the organizations that they're delivering those to just don't see the return on investment. And that's a shame. But I think part of the problem is there's just too many Gen AI initiatives going on. A lot of businesses have, I've seen businesses and they're doing 50, 60 of these use cases all at once and just trying to see what actually sticks, where what they should probably be doing is understanding the real business problems, understanding what is the low risk ones, the ease to bring to production, focus on those, show the real value, get the buy-in from your execs and your board, and then focus on those. So I think that's where we need to get to, because there's absolutely real value here. And we are again working in an interesting sector. So ours is aged care, it's healthcare, life sciences, where the impact that we're making is on a human being. Sometimes when you compare that to other sectors where they're doing some AI stuff in financial services, for an example, they're making significant inroads into operational costs, which is making higher dividends to shareholders. Whereas we measure our ROI differently. We measure it on time back in the day for our employees to provide better care. So I think just over time, we're in this really interesting juncture where people are still just working out where AI is going and what is the best use of it for their sector. And it is significantly different from each of the sectors from what I'm seeing. So yeah, really interesting time. I think over the next year or so, we'll start to see people really starting to get some ROI benefits on their initiatives that they're doing in AI. And I think, we're going to see some amazing initiatives coming out in the next 12 months.
Can you identify any of them, Zeljko? What do you see? How do you see AI taking that leap forward for many companies?
Well, I like to as well add on what Gaurav mentioned. So I think it's a really valid point that we have nowadays a bit, there's still the confusion in many areas of seeing AI being a kind of a smart automation piece, but not really being there. What Andrew mentioned at the very beginning, I really liked, because I think as well, I see many of these kind of recent announcements. And look, it always depends. Some things are still in the stage of basically being tested. But the whole thing about genetics, about cures, things where you need a lot of manual kind of efforts to repetitions that cost a lot of time and money. And having these kind of possibilities nowadays to basically simulate things in a virtual environment, it helps us so much to reduce the time significantly, which as well reduces then significantly the cost. But at the same time has such a huge kind of benefit of gaining and research data that we're basically like gaining over time, that helps as well then in the next iterations and the evolution to use that and to be even faster with this exponential kind of learning curve that we're seeing. And as well, look, I see all these kind of differences in the new announcements with certain cures. And again, I mean, some things have to be still proven in the long run. But I'm seeing a lot of improvement in the sphere, specifically with healthcare. That's the one thing. And the other one in the education, especially look in Asia Pacific, we have these lower kind of income countries. We have higher wage countries. And you see the differences, for example, and the way education can be afforded. So you see, for example, as well, that there is more a customized kind of system that, for example, if you go into kind of in a wealthier environment, you're very customized international schools, right? While if you go to other areas where financials, budgets are an issue, it's more kind of like a standardized approach in terms of education. And I believe that's going to change, especially having access to these kind of, let's say, virtual environments, having virtual teachers. Agentic AI was going to be, I think, a major one in combination with all these kind of other technologies. Sure. And an important one, then innovation that the whole thing brings, because everyone nowadays wants to be an international manager and want to be an influencer online, but nobody wants to do handicraft stuff, right? For example, if you see in Europe, I hear more and more that there are no people who can, for example, do plumbing. It's very difficult to get these guys on site, right? They ask for ridiculous kind of hourly wages because they simply can. It's getting less and less. They're retiring. They're getting older. They're dying off. There's a whole generation basically that's disappearing from that market. And I think that's going to be as well something not related directly to AI, but something that's going to be transformed significantly, I think, in the next 4 to 10 years.
I hope you're not suggesting robot plumbers. I'm not having them in my house.
Takes another.
We've heard a lot today worrying statistics, which everybody knows that more than 90% of AI projects never get off the ground for lots of reasons. Poor planning, possibly the misidentification of the right use cases. So for organizations who may be not as far down the road as you four panelists, what pieces of advice would you give people watching if they want to take some steps forward? Can I start with you, Zeljko?
Sure. Look, I think the single one thing I think is important is don't panic. I see everywhere the same kind of like emotional involvement in the whole topic. We are in a macroeconomic environment where everyone starts like to cut cost. This goes together with organizational changes where, for example, especially now in the whole tech environment where it's required to have actually these insights, you see more and more these organizations, they're restructuring. It's becoming not anymore kind of a value creator, but rather a cost center. And I would much rather want to see that this is being taken from an awareness perspective in a different kind of role, and to move it to prioritize it instead of like just seeing it as a cost factor, while at the same time we want to cut costs, we want more efficiency, we want more innovation. And I think those two things have to find a balance, and it comes, I think, together if we simply like relax for a moment, start to breathe in, and then to evaluate the situation where we are in the industry, depending on the company, what industry are we in, and how can we create value with the situation that we're in terms of like the spendings and the right people in the right positions to take the whole thing forward.
Andrew, may I ask you to pluck up the courage to offer sage advice to organizations possibly starting out on the journey?
Well, if they haven't started, what I would say is start with a really low risk use case which you want to bring into production. Like I said earlier, if you start with something which has got low risk, easy to bring to production, no personal identification information, data is in your own ecosystem, you're not exposing it outside to anyone else, only your employees can access it. Therefore, you can also then work out your data, classify it correctly and put in security controls. But if it's your own data ecosystem, the risk is much lower. Get your execs and your board on board for the journey really early. Don't go and create an MVP and then present that to the board. Get the business to be involved in the requirements to start with. Show that to your execs and board, and get them brought in very early into the equation. Make sure if you do need some security controls and governance in place, build that out in parallel. And then the last thing is, just start. You got to do it. Everyone else is doing it now. If you don't start embracing AI, looking at the value and showing the benefits, you are going to be left behind. You will not have a competitive advantage. And if you follow those other simple steps, you absolutely will be successful in getting your first Gen AI platform to production.
Thank you. And Amy?
Yeah, I would say focus on the business problems because there are things that untapped within the business that AI could really help to solve. And if you have those data in your organization that you haven't been able to do, before, you couldn't take advantage of it, and focus on some of those things. And I agree, you got to be organized, thinking about it, having a plan. It doesn't need to be a huge strategy or anything, but you need to have an enterprise view of where do we want to focus on experiment first and understand the risk, as usually the internal use cases are much safer place to experiment and learn than the external, and also having that architecture. So thinking about bringing the LLM into your organization rather than sending data out, for instance, from the architecture, data privacy, if that is really important, creating the environment to experiment on those with the open source LLM, and also thinking about those guardrails. I think the guardrails is really important. They need to be running. They need to be part of the application. Having something to detect PII, detect the toxic content and detect like a hallucination, and a part of the application. And they just try to prove that business problem, I think, and bring people on board. And those are really important in getting the success and where to start.
Thank you. And Gaurav, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but the last word to you.
Yeah, keep it short. I would say don't give in to the FOMO. AI is paradoxically unique. It's yet to hit a stage where it's starting to solve unique problems, still at an automation stage. The second point I would say, start with clarity, not just curiosity. And last, set smart, measurable KPIs. Without KPIs, AI is just a science project.
Panel, thank you very much indeed for a real scoot through the future of Gen AI. I think we've also solved the problems of world poverty. AI, if AI can sort that, my goodness, it can surely sort anything. Well, we'll see. Panel, it's been a brilliant conversation. Zeljko, Amy, Gaurav and Andrew, thank you for joining us.